I'm Aaron Porras, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Natalie Portman becomes Prime Minister Netanyahu's Black Swan. Israel opens an investigation into the death of a 15-year-old Palestinian boy during the latest Gaza clashes. And check out what happens when 300 drones get in sync for Israel's 70th birthday. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. When Israeli-American actress Natalie Portman was selected to win the $1 million Genesis Award, the equivalent of a Jewish Nobel here in Israel, it seemed like a no-brainer. The Oscar winner was supposed to come to Israel in June to accept the prize in person, but now Portman has stunned Israeli lawmakers by saying she won't come because she refuses to be seen as endorsing Israel's government, namely its Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. When news of Portman's snub first broke out, right-wing Israeli leaders immediately lambasted Portman for apparently succumbing to the BDS movement to boycott Israel. Public Security Minister Gilad Erdan even claimed that she had been tricked by Hamas propaganda in the wake of the latest Gaza clashes, likening her decision to the character she played in the Star Wars prequels, writing, quote, "Anakin Skywalker, a character you know well from Star Wars, went through a similar process. I call on you not to let the dark side win," end quote. But Portman has just made a very clear and definitive personal statement on the matter, saying she is absolutely not part of the BDS movement, and that, quote, "Like many Israelis and Jews around the world, I can be critical of the leadership in Israel without wanting to boycott the entire nation," end quote. While Israel has been criticized for the death of some 35 Palestinians along the Gaza border in recent weeks, Portman's statement also seemed to allude to another controversial Israeli policy, its plan to forcibly deport nearly 38,000 African asylum seekers. While Netanyahu's Likud party has now attacked Portman as a hypocrite, other Israeli lawmakers see this as a big wake-up call, a sign that Jewish Americans are becoming more and more disgruntled with the policies of the State of Israel. Joining me now in the studio with more on Natalie Portman and diaspora Jewry, our investigative journalist with Israel Hayom, Akiva Bigman, and Yariv Oppenheimer, a board member and former director of Peace Now. Thank you both very much for coming in.
Thank you.
So my first question, actually, I'll start with you, Yariv, is was this event more politicized by the fact that Netanyahu was there? Because, I mean, he's been there for previous ceremonies as well. Or was it more politicized by the fact that Natalie Portman made a big deal of not coming?
I think that if she would come, it was a statement saying, I'm supportive of this government, of this policy. And when she's not coming, she actually saying the opposite. And I think that eventually she had no choice. Because if she were coming to here, and then she was starting to talk about the occupation and about the Israeli policy toward the people coming, the refugees coming from Africa, and about other controversial issue, people here will say, this is why you came, in order to say nasty things about us while you are getting our prize.
Therein lies the question too, because the prize is to award, a member of the Jewish community worldwide for instilling Jewish values and promoting Jewish values towards the next generation. That's basically straight off of their homepage. So what about coming to accept that prize, awarding her for her way of doing things in the world?
But if she feels that Israel is not going in the right direction and Israel is not serving the ideological cause, the values of the progressive Jewish community around the world, especially in North America, so she will feel that she betrayed her values. Because if she's coming here, she's actually adopting and saying, okay, I'm fine with the Israeli policy. And this is, by the way, why Israel would like her to come. Because we would like to use her in order to show that we are, the greatest. And she cannot afford to herself to compromise about the values and to say, I'm going to dismiss all criticism about what's going on here. I'm going to come and to play the game. And I think that this was the very brave step that she took.
Okay. Well, I think she could have done exactly the opposite. Well, what happened today is she said she's not coming. Everybody understood this as some kind of a BDS move. She's against Israel. She wants to join the BDS. The BDS guys endorsed her, and then she has to tweet and say, "No, I'm not on the BDS. I actually love Israel. I just oppose some policies." She could have done the opposite. She could have come to the prize, and then everybody will say, "Well, she endorses Netanyahu. She's for the whatever happens with illegal immigrants and with Gaza." And then she can tweet and say, "Well, I love Israel. That's my country. These are my people, but I don't agree with some of their policies. She could have done the exact opposite
But I
and be
think-
on the side of Israel and Israeli people, and then tweet the exemption instead of being again on the side of the other side, which is against Israeli
Kiva,
people,
you know-
and in the camp of the BDS guys, and then tweet the exemption
think-
saying she loves Israel.
I think she's ideological person, and this is the reason why she's taking this risk of not coming, because this is a risk to become a target for the Israelis and Jewish communities around the world, and she's doing a very brave action because of that. And if she would done the opposite, so people will say this nasty tweet was totally unacceptable. If you came here, that's enough. Don't come and then in our living room say bad things about the host.
I think you're wrong because of one main issue, because the community she's thinking about, which is relevant to her decision making, is not the Israeli public. It's the public in America, the democratic public, in Hollywood, her colleagues, and towards her public to come to Israel would have been a very brave
But
move.
it's not coming to
Not to
Israel.
come, 1 minute, not to show up. And to sort of boycott Netanyahu and the right-wing
so
government is not the brave. That's the common knowledge
So
in Hollywood.
I want to address that, because that's sort of what's at the heart of this argument here is, what are the Jewish values? What are Jewish values in general, Jewish values of diaspora Jewry, and are we meeting these values?
I think that we are getting into the most controversial issue among the Israelis. And this is the question whether Israel is a Jewish state or a Jewish and democratic state. And when people abroad feel that we are only a Jewish state, that are going away from all the values that are creating the Jewishness of us, for example, human rights, mercy toward the other, equality, democracy, all this is going to the garbage. So people are saying, this is not the Israeli that I meant. This is not my value. This is not the way that I understand Judaism. I prefer to disconnect myself from this kind of Israel and to keep myself out there in America, not connected in any form or way to Netanyahu and the values that Netanyahu represents, that are contradict the democratic values and the humanitarian approach to the world.
Here's the tragedy of American Jewry. A lot of the American elites, the Jewish elites, are progressive people. That's their view. That's their view of Judaism, because it extrapolates from Reform Judaism and etc. Their view, their vision for Israel is a progressive vision, which is not shared by most of Israelis. That's very sad, it's very tragic, but most of Israelis don't share this vision. And as time goes by, the gap between the progressive vision of what Israel is supposed to be for these people and what the Israelis want their country to be is getting wider and wider. And this is what we see today. Natalie Portman is just a symptom of that. It goes deeper and wider. There's something to question is how many of the American Jews are part of this elite progressive vision of Israel and Judaism. Maybe that's not so much as we think. Maybe it's not so bad that this gap is getting bigger. Maybe it's not so terrible for Israel. A fact is that let's say like organization like an organization like Friends of IDF had like
it doesn't contradict, by the way.
they had the largest sum of donations this year. So it doesn't exactly mean that there's some kind of terrible crisis with the Israel state.
We should not forget the term universal values, and these are the issues that are creating the Jewishness as I understand it. And people in America, when see Israel and Netanyahu leading this process, going away from these kind of values, they feel that they have nothing in common with Israel. The opposite, Israel contradict what they believe in, and their only option is to say, you know what, leave me alone, I want to live my life here.
They never had anything in common with Israel, only the Holocaust made them, connected them to Israel for a generation and a half.
No.
And it's not surprising that this connection...
They support Israel as a Jewish democratic state, but not
only
as
in
a
the 40s.
Jewish state.
Started only in the 40s.
Well, we're gonna have to. We'll have to see how this unfolds and how the government kind of responds to this as it progresses. So, anyway, thank you both very much for coming in today. All right, now in other news, a Palestinian man now confirmed as a top Hamas engineer has just been killed in a drive-by shooting in Malaysia. The man's name is Fadi Mohammed Al-Bach, and he had reportedly just published a major new advancement on drone technology before he was killed. Hamas has blamed Israel's Mossad agency for the killing, while Israel, as per its policy, has remained mum on any involvement. Malaysia's deputy prime minister has confirmed that the people behind Al-Bach's killing are believed to be Europeans well linked to foreign intelligence. Though Israel may certainly have its own reasons to carry out an assassination like this, namely to keep advanced drone and rocket technology out of Hamas's hands, Hamas's enemies are numerous to say the least. An autopsy just conducted in Malaysia has revealed no new leads. Witnesses say al-Bach was on his way to a local mosque for prayer that morning when two shooters on motorcycle riddled him with bullets. The past 48 hours marked the fourth consecutive weekend of clashes between Palestinians and Israeli forces along the Gaza border. Though Hamas claims these protests are merely a peaceful sit-in, Israel says they're just a smokescreen for terror and border infiltration. Regardless, the IDF has faced intense criticisms for its use of lethal force in these clashes. Adding fuel to that debate is the death of a 15-year-old Palestinian boy on Friday, apparently at the hands of an Israeli sniper. ILTV's Brett Allen Smith is here with the story. Brett?
Thanks, Aaron. Well, this is another incident that's already grabbed a lot of global attention, as you can probably imagine. And as usual, it's pretty much just evolved into the case of he said, she said. Now, according to the IDF, 15-year-old Mohammed Ibrahim Ayub was on his way to damage the main security fence at the time he was shot and ultimately killed. This is the same line of defense, by the way, the Army typically uses to defend its use of live fire in these clashes. But we actually have a video allegedly taken at the border at the time Ayub was shot. Let's go ahead and pull up that video on the full screen right now. Now, I warn you guys at home, this video does have graphic content because it seems to show the 15-year-old boy at the moment of being shot, and it appears to be a direct kill shot to the head. And though he is within the vicinity of the border, to my eye anyway, the actual fence doesn't appear to be anywhere nearby in sight.
All right, now look, I mean, I've said this before, it's difficult to suss out exactly what's going on in certain situations, especially situations of
on the
war.
ground and war. Yeah.
And with a snapshot of footage like this, if that footage is in fact legitimate, of course, on the other hand, I will say that the Army typically defends its actions without providing much physical evidence to support it.
Right. Well, further to that, just like the death of the Palestinian journalist at the border clashes, a week or two ago, this death has opened a Pandora's box of global criticism. The UN's Mideast envoy and a slew of international leaders have demanded the Army, at the very least, investigate this teen's death and just figure out, exactly what happened on the ground. Now, the Army says an investigation is underway, but even before releasing any of those facts, they already say that Israel is totally absolved from any wrongdoing. And this is a trend that we see a lot. And for everyone on the outside, just trying to understand, it's a frustrating pattern that kind of seems to go nowhere for them.
All right, well, speaking of that, I mean, the UN Special Envoy, Nikolai Mladenov, certainly let those anxieties be known on Twitter as well. I mean, when the news of this death broke, he seemingly accused Israel of purposefully shooting the child and thus breeding more killing.
Right.
Israeli politicians quickly joined the Twitter fight and said, Hamas is clearly the one to blame for sending kids to the front line, which they've certainly been accused of doing in the past as well.
True. And on the one hand, I think that everyone would agree that Israel has a right to defend its borders from terror. But on the other hand, when you put some of these incidents side by side, this journalist, this teenager, with the stories and the video that never quite lines up on either side, you do get a pattern here that needs to be analyzed honestly and carefully, because otherwise this dance is just going to go on forever.
Yeah, I mean, this was the fourth weekend of the six-week planned Palestinian March of Return. Right. So, I mean, for now, we'll just have to wait and see what next weekend brings. Thanks for the update, Brett.
Of course.
All right, a recent United States State Department report on human rights has, for the first time in nearly 30 years, stopped referring to the Palestinian territories as occupied by Israeli military forces. In previous years, a chapter referring to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict was titled, quote, Israel and the Occupied Territories, end quote. But this year, the document reads only Israel, Golan Heights, West Bank, and Gaza. Though some will argue that this is merely semantics, the change has already rallied fierce debate. Israeli Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman has applauded the change, saying that the United States has undone the, quote, lie of the occupied Palestinian territories, end quote. American Ambassador to Israel David Friedman has been pushing to drop this language of occupied from official U.S. texts since at least last year, and clearly the Trump administration has agreed with him. Still, both activists and historians say the nuance dangerously whitewashes Israel's role in a highly controversial affair. Israeli military forces have occupied disputed Palestinian territories since 1967. Last year marked the 50th anniversary of the beginning of IDF entrenchment in those territories, making this the longest military occupation in modern history. Despite the syntax, the State Department's report did include scathing accusations of human rights violations on all sides, including against Hamas, the Palestinian Authority, and the Israeli army. Disturbing accounts of rising anti-Semitism have been plaguing Germany for quite some time now. One such story was captured on tape a short time ago in a so-called Koopa experiment that quickly erupted into violence. Take a look. A 21-year-old man in Berlin, who happens to be an Arab-Israeli citizen, didn't believe the rumors that Germany had become unsafe for Jews. So he and a friend decided to put that to the test by wearing a kippah, a religious skull cap most commonly associated with the Jewish faith. The results of their experiment, as they'd later call it, didn't take long to surface. During a walk through the Prenzlauer Berg neighborhood of the German capital, they were soon stopped by 3 Arab speakers hurling anti-Semitic insults. The situation soon spiraled into violence when one of the men took out a belt and a bottle and began pummeling the kippah wearer.
I called the police! I called the police!
A video captured at the scene quickly went viral. Though the images are shocking, unfortunately this story itself isn't so unfamiliar for Germany's Jewish population. Incidents like this have erupted throughout the country in recent years, and just 2 days ago, hundreds of neo-Nazis gathered for a festival in East Germany to celebrate Hitler's birthday. But Berlin's Jewish community has taken this incident as a major wake-up call. They've just announced a new campaign called Berlin Wears the Kippah to mobilize against anti-Semitism and to hopefully make the streets safe for anyone who wants to express their religion, no matter what that religion is. Now, if you've ever been scrolling through stuff on your phone and thought, wow, those pants or that jacket or those glasses look really cool, well, you're in luck, because Israeli app Screenshop has now made it possible to find those items and many, many more with the click of a button. Here to tell us all about it is Screenshop CTO and co-founder Jonathan Karras. Thank you very much for coming in. It's a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so tell me a little bit, specifically, what is it that Screenshop does and how does it work?
All right, no problem. So Screenshop is an app that you download for free for your iPhone or Android phone. And it's a really cool way to make a customized catalog of clothing and fashion and apparel based on the things that you browse and screenshot from any other social media app on your phone.
And it's just like clothing and apparel, or it's also like shoes, glasses, hats?
It's pretty much everything. So underneath the hood, it's actually a very powerful blockchain-based technology that we've taken about 500 different retailers that we're working with to bring over 10 million products from everything from home decor and glasses and hats and anything that you could buy at any of the stores that you would love. And we make that bridge between what you browse on Snapchat and Instagram and what you can actually order to your house.
And I'm assuming that once this takes off, you're probably going to add businesses to that list of 500. So this, that could grow exponentially.
Well, we are actually getting more inbounds on a weekly basis than we can handle. When we first started, we launched the app about 4 months ago, and we had around 250, and they just keep coming in. Once brands get a real idea of the power of both of the data and the insights and the customer acquisition that we're bringing them, they just want in.
That's incredible. So what inspired the creation of this app?
So it actually came from one of our partners, Kim Kardashian. Oh. So when I joined the company, my partners had been working on integrating social and fashion for about two years prior. So I joined about 1.5 years ago, around the same time that Kim invested in us. And what she wanted was a great way where anybody would be able to take her feed or any of her friends' feeds and then just instantly turn into a catalog. And so I actually got to work for about 9 months hand in hand with Kim, really building and designing this app.
How was that?
She is a professional and nothing like what you see on TV.
Nothing like what you see on TV?
No, nothing.
That's good to hear, actually.
When I first came to her house, I handed my driver's license to the security, and they looked up to me and said in perfect Hebrew, "What are you doing here?" Because they were all Israeli. So she's very familiar with Israel. She's very familiar with the startup nation. It was great.
All right. Well, this is an incredible app, and I was really excited to have you here to tell us about it. Screenshop, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Check it out on Apple and Google and
the Play Store. Yeah, it's a free download, and it works with any other app on your phone.
Amazing. All right. Thank you so much for coming in.
Take care.
All right, now it's on the eve of Israel's 70th birthday. The Central Bureau of Statistics revealed the country's current population. And in 2018, Israel so far is made up of 8.86 million people, 10 times more citizens than the country had in May 1948, when Israel officially became a state. Back in 1948, there were just 806,000 people living in the Holy Land. Now the Jewish community stands at 6.59 million, a whopping 74.5% of the country. The Arab population is at 1.95 million, making up 20.9%, and the Christians and members of other religions make up 404,000, or 4.6% of the overall population. Israel has grown by 163,000 people since last year, and interestingly, 28,000 of them are new immigrants to the country. In fact, since Israel was founded, more than 3.2 million people have immigrated to the country. So where's the country headed? Well, Israel's population is predicted to reach 15.2 million people by 2048. I certainly hope we'll have enough space. In honor of Israel's 70th birthday and in celebration of its independence, the CEO of Intel, along with 300 of his shooting star drones, attended the celebrations held in Jerusalem, putting together his own little present to help commemorate the event. And ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh has all of the details. Take it away.
Thanks, Aaron. Yes, the CEO of Intel Corporation, Brian Kranich, joined Israel in celebrating its 70th anniversary of its independence Wednesday night in Jerusalem, which included an incredible display of 300 Intel drones. As part of the event, Intel's shooting star drone lit up the sky with star-like images of the Star of David, Theodore Herzl, the walls of Jerusalem, and so much more. The drones themselves are equipped with LED bulbs, which are actually able to create over 4 billion color combinations.
Wow, I mean, that sounds insane. I mean, I wasn't at the event myself, but I saw footage and I'm completely blown away.
Right. So I heard that we most definitely missed out. I wasn't there either. But before the event, Intel CEO actually mentioned how excited he was to be participating in the event, and actually how this year marks Intel's 50th anniversary, along with Israel's 70th, saying, quote, "This is a double and moving birthday."
Oh, that's coincidental and fun.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I guess this doesn't come as that much of a shock. You know, I read a report just the other day that said Intel has been operating specifically in the Holy Land since 1974,
right,
and has invested something like $17 billion to date, most recently in the auto tech firm Mobileye.
Right.
And actually, this isn't even the first time shooting star drones lit up an event, right?
Right. That's right, Aaron. These shooting star drones have actually been showcased at other events abroad, such as the Olympic Winter Games. And actually, they did a little light show for the one and only Israeli Wonder Woman, Gal Gadot, which was really amazing. I think it's safe to say we're going to be seeing a lot more of Intel's shooting star drones in events across the world.
Oh, wow. I mean, I definitely hope to see that happening. It was a spectacular event.
Right.
Emmanuel, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
I know the Israeli navigation app Waze has already become a staple of most drivers' lives, but this week there is even more of a reason to use it than ever. To celebrate Israel's 70th birthday, Waze will be offering presidential directions. And when I say presidential, I mean the Israeli President Reuven Rivlin will literally be voicing the directions for an entire week. Starting on April 19th, Rivlin is helping guide drivers around the country by not only providing directions, but also driving tips. And if you've ever driven in Israel, you probably know how much advice Israeli drivers need. President Rivlin said he wanted to make sure that Israeli citizens reached all their Independence Day celebrations happily and, most importantly, safely. The Israeli leader has already recorded a collection of directions at the Waze headquarters in Tel Aviv, where he even met with the employees and the company's CEO, Noam Bardi. But he also made one confession, that since becoming president, Rivlin says he doesn't really even drive on his own anymore. Either way, Waze users can rest assured that President Rivlin will be sending them on the right path, because after all, he's collaborating with one of the most successful startup ventures of all time. In 2013, the internet giant Google purchased Waze for $1.3 billion, and with currently 45 million users worldwide, Waze is definitely one of Israel's proudest accomplishments, something to celebrate just in time for Israel's 70th birthday. Now it's time for our Hebrew word of the day. We just saw 300 drones do a synchronized swimming-like light show over the city of Jerusalem, so today's word, in honor of all things that glitter, is lenatznetz, which means to sparkle. All right, so other than fireworks, what comes to mind when you hear the word lenatznetz, or to sparkle? Some would say diamonds, because if there's one thing that sparkles, or notzetz, it's gotta be a big juicy diamond, right? Others might say the stars in the sky notzetzim, or sparkle, better than anything on earth. But if you ask me, I'd say there's only one thing that notzetz supreme above all else. The space oddity starman himself, the diamond dog in the flesh, David Bowie. May he rest in peace and notzetz for all time. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be clear and pleasant with a low of 60 or 16 degrees Celsius. And then tomorrow will be sunny and warm with little change in temperatures and a high of about 73 or 23 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.53 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Aaron Porras. Thank you for watching.